All right. Who knows if this will ever be made into anything, but I think it's worthwhile to just put it out there, right? Hey, my name is Yon, and I have a YouTube channel, and I've been really thinking a lot about what this channel means to me and what I want to do with the channel in the future. So, in order to talk about that a little bit, we got to kind of take a step back and talk about, growing up, my childhood, just sort of the things that I wanted to do. To tell a little bit about myself, growing up, I was a good kid, listened to my parents, did everything that they, kind of wanted me to do. And there was sort of a point where I realized I really, really liked art and drawing. And my parents didn't think it was such a good idea for me to pursue that, kind of like a sort of like a main focus of study, a career, right? And so I remember distinctly asking my parents if I can go to art school, and then they said, no, you cannot go to art school. You should just go to like a regular school for college, right? And at the time, I just accepted it, and I went to a regular college and blah 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 and all that stuff. But I think there was a lot of regret. Not that art school necessarily solves everything, because actually, to be quite frank, I think there's a lot of people who went to art school who actually say like the art school is a scam, or like that art school is not worth it, or blah blah blah. So mileage varies, but I think the point is that there was a certain point in my life where creative energy, the things kind of like that I really wanted to do, it was in some ways kind of put to the side, right? For the, how do you say, the more practical avenues of life, right? Like school, work, things like that. And there was a point where I really, really wanted to make art, make something. And it wasn't even like traditional art necessarily, but I just always felt really inspired watching movies or anime, reading manga, reading novels, books, consuming just all sorts of media, and just kind of, do you know what I mean when I say those moments where you just like you get like goosebumps on your skin because of how beautiful like some music is, or how like epic like this moment in like a movie is, or like the book you're reading or whatever. And I always felt this insane surge of like this sense of like purposeness, I guess, if that's even a word, like a feeling like, oh, like this is why like life is worth living, to experience these kinds of like art and just like this human creativity. Like I really felt like those moments were what gave my life meaning and purpose. And I always sort of wanted to not just be on the receiving end of consuming that, but also be on the creating end. And what does it feel like to make other people feel the way that I do? Because it feels incredible whenever I'm consuming media. That's just amazing. And so I sort of knew this growing up, because in school, if you ever had group projects, like I did growing up, and sometimes you had video projects where you basically had to make a video about a certain topic or whatever, and present it to the class by a certain deadline. And I loved doing these. Like, I was that kid who basically, whenever these kind of group projects would come up, I would tell my group like, hey, I can do this, and this, and kind of like wanted to like edit everything and like write the script and blah blah blah, have all these ideas. And most of the times, just everyone else was like, okay, let's just like the nerd do everything, and we'll just get a good grade, whatever. Like no one cared, right? Like they didn't like argue with me. They were just like, yeah, okay, do whatever, we'll just like listen to whatever you want to do. And then so I would write a script, I would plan everything out, I would go home, and I would we would film on like my it was my dad's camcorder, like a digital camcorder that we had in the family. And and then I would edit it on my family computer. And it was just like this, like I didn't know anything about like editing software. And so we just had Windows Movie Maker, which is, looking back, some of the most basic, like it's too basic, like honestly. And so there was like a problem with Windows Movie Maker at least when I used it, where you couldn't like layer multiple sounds, like sound effects and background music and stuff. At least I didn't know how to. If that's a thing that you could have done in Windows Movie Maker, I'm sorry. But the kid me did not know how to do that. So what I would do, which is a stupid workaround, is I would export the file like numerous times and add a layer of sound like every single time. So for example, I would put the background music on the first export and then add the sound effects on the second export and add the narration on the third export. And granted, like that was not like the smartest idea because it does make the visual quality, the visual fidelity go down every time you export it like that. Because think about it, right? It's like taking a photocopy of a photocopy and photocopying it. And so you're going to lose quality, but I mean, that's how I did it. And I loved whenever it was like my group's turn to show the video, and we would show the video and people would like laugh and thought it was really, really cool. And like, you know, my teachers liked it too. And that made me feel really freaking good. Like I felt super, I don't know, I felt super cool. I felt like it was awesome that I could sort of create that kind of emotion in other people through what I made, you know? And so, you know, yeah, again, growing up, I knew that I really liked these things, and just didn't I just stopped pursuing them as I get older and older. And I guess kind of, again, like going back to it, like just focusing more on quote unquote like practical avenues of life as opposed to doing like creative things. And even though I did grow up sort of in that generation where like YouTube was starting to become a thing and like some people were starting to become YouTubers, it certainly wasn't as prevalent as it is today. I mean, you know, to just get a context of like when I grew up, like people, when you asked kids like in elementary school what they want to be when they grew up, they would say stuff like, I want to be a firefighter, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a president of the United States. Like those kinds of, you know, answers. Mainly like, I mean, I guess that was just kind of like the thing. But now apparently the number one thing the kids want to be is like an influencer or YouTuber or TikToker, which I'm not gonna like try to pass judgment on that and say like that's bad, because I mean, look at me, man. Like, you know, I'm doing this in my free time and, you know, trying to create stuff online. And one day if I can make this be a full-time thing, I would definitely love to explore that avenue. But I think what I'm trying to say is that it wasn't sort of like a known thing, you know. Creating stuff online wasn't this kind of like a given that like, oh, I mean, yeah, it's not that surprising for people to create stuff online. I definitely grew up at a time where like if you were like making stuff on YouTube or online and stuff like that, it wasn't that it was like weird, but it wasn't mainstream for sure, you know. And again, you know, I never really did non-mainstream stuff in my life. I just kind of stuck to the mainstreamness of everything. And so growing up, like some of the ways actually I would have fun or hang out with my friends was I would just pick up my family's camcorder and we would like film like random skits or like, you know, random like short movies. Of course, these are not good and they were never seen by the public because they just stayed on my family camcorder. But it's just to put a point that like, I think if I grew up in an age like kind of now where the sort of like just TikTok, Instagram, this sort of like social media generation, I most definitely probably would have said the same thing, that I would want to be an influencer, or I would want to be a YouTuber or a Twitch streamer or whatever. And so I think all that is just to say that I've wanted to do this for a long time, and now I finally have sort of this avenue and took the leap of faith to do it. So why did it take me so long to even, you know, do it, right? I mean, like YouTube's been around for a long time. It's free to make an account and create videos. Like you said, you were interested as a kid. Why did you never do it? And the answer is complicated, but also not complicated. What I mean by that is that there's a lot of different things I can say, but really fundamentally, it comes down to one thing, which is fear. I was really afraid of sharing like my work and parts of me to online, the online community, you know, online just in general. And it's one of those things that I still think I work on and I think about a lot. Is I think I tend to be a pretty private person, and sort of the idea of like sharing parts of me and like part of my work online, it's really cool. And the fact that you can share things like across the world at like basically no time lag, like, you know, when I upload a video, anyone in the world can see it pretty much minutes after it's uploaded. That's incredible. And at the same time, you know, you are opening yourself up to sort of, I don't know, like judgments and comments of other people, you know. That's definitely it, for better or for worse, and for good or bad comments, you know. And so I think for a long time I really struggled with that idea. I also really struggled with this idea of kind of like this perfectionism, right? And it's silly to think about because, you know, perfection is a very interesting concept in the sense that it doesn't really exist. There is no such thing as perfection. Humans, you know, we are inherently flawed, you know, flawed creatures. It's impossible for us to be perfect. But the illusion of striving for perfection is something that I think I was definitely really struggling with. And even now making stuff, you know, if you look at my upload history, you can see just how erratic it is. Now, granted, you know, I don't make money from my YouTube channel. It's definitely just a passionate hobby that I have. But even then, you know, you would think like, well, you say you're so full of passion. Why aren't you uploading consistently? Why aren't you, you know, making stuff? And the funny story is that I actually do make a lot of stuff. The most of that stuff just never gets seen by the public. I have hard drives full of, you know, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% edited videos on various topics and different things that never see the light of day because, you know, I kind of, you know, halfway or, you know, most of the way through the editing, it's like, I think it's not good enough, or I feel like is this kind of cringe? Like, you know, I don't really feel confident about it, and then I'll give up and I'll just lose steam and I'll forget about it. Yeah, that would happen, and that would happen for months at a time. And it's weird, you know, like looking from the outside in is probably, you just look at like, oh, this guy hasn't uploaded in 6 months, like, you know, like clearly he doesn't think so much about his channel or doesn't care that much. But, you know, it's interesting from my perspective. It's like I definitely want to keep posting stuff, but, you know, I just couldn't bring myself to finish and upload. And that part of creative process is something that I've been coping with a lot, and just thinking about like, how do I really work through this, and how do I really struggle through this? There is a series of videos by this YouTube channel called I think, I don't know if this is the right name for the YouTube channel, but their podcast is called Make Art Not Content. And they have 2 videos. One of them is called the Basquiat's Jean-Michel Basquiat's work ethic, and then the other one is Prince's work ethic. And they talk about, you know, the artist Jean-Michel Basquiat as well as the artist, the music artist Prince, and talk about like their work sort of styles and like how they were able to produce so much art in their lifetime. And it's pretty inspiring, honestly. If you're someone who is, you know, a creative in any discipline, I really suggest you go watch it. I'll link it down in the description below if this ever makes it on YouTube, right? But it talks about how they kind of have they just create stuff, man. They just create, release, create, and they don't focus on sort of like making everything so perfect and just being really too detail oriented about it. And you know, it was those videos that really gave me that push to start re-uploading stuff. And what's interesting is one of the videos that I uploaded after not uploading for a really long time was this video, a short video essay that I called you know, how Crash Bandicoot redefined death animations. The Art of Dying is like another sort of title that I worked with, but it's now in the thumbnail. And basically it talks about this old PlayStation 1 trilogy game called Crash Bandicoot, developed by Naughty Dog, and how they were really pushing like the limits of like character animation at the time, and like really creative with like including a lot of variety in the way that the main character of the platforming game would, you know, die. And that was sort of like, you know, why that was cool, and like what was the artistic decision behind that, and blah blah blah. And what most people don't know is that I had edited about 60 to 70% of that video to completion a year ago, and that was just on my hard drive. And the reason I couldn't finish it is because I just didn't think that the video was very good, honestly. I just sort of got stuck in that process. And then after like days and weeks of like, struggling with it, I just kind of like, I guess, quote unquote, gave up. And I didn't really revisit it until now. And after watching those videos about Basquiat and Prince, I was like, listen, I just got to get something out there. Like, it's okay if people maybe don't watch it and people don't like it. I just need to get something out there, and for myself, like I just need to get something out there. And it's not about like obsessing over this perfection, right? And I'm really glad I did because as of now the video has like 5,000 views, which is a lot for my channel and for my standards. And I'm proud of the video, honestly. Do I think it's perfect? No, definitely not. But I think it's a good video. I really like how I ended up delivering, and I think it's a cool little piece, and it means a lot to me because the game was something that I played a lot as a kid, and it's very special for me personally. So I'm really glad I finished it, and it kind of taught me this lesson that like half finished works aren't waste of time. We kind of feel, I think, generally in our society, and this is my opinion, maybe saying we is not the right way to think about it or frame it, because maybe it's just a personal opinion, but I feel like a lot of sort of the expectations of society is that there's a sense of performativity, isn't there, with the way we live our lives and lead our lives, right? It's like living for the sake of recording and capturing it for the future. Does that make sense? So it's like you take pictures of moments and you pose and you try to curate certain moments so that you can take pictures, videos, and post it on Instagram or share with other people. And that's really interesting because on one hand, I think making stuff is cool, but on the other hand, there's this sort of element of like, you gotta really, I don't know, like you gotta like really like create like, and sort of the way of being and existing is a way to make stuff, take good pictures and make cool stuff. And I don't know, there's like something about that's to me feels like there's a sense of like distance between like authenticity and organicness versus sort of curating everything. And what am I talking about? Like, why is that related to anything I've been talking about? I think for me, especially, I think this idea of trying to be perfect with certain things, it comes also hand in hand with the sense of like inauthenticity in my eyes, right? And I'm not saying that, hastily done, just kind of like do whatever, in that kind of attitude when you approach, art or creating creative projects is necessarily like better or good. It's just more that I think there's charm to something that just isn't completely perfect. Like, there was one video that I released where I just started talking. I just felt for some reason I wanted to talk about a topic that I've been thinking a lot about personally, and I talked and I overlaid some gameplay over it, a PlayStation 1 game called Pepsi Man, and then I just released it, and it was like a 20-something minute video of me just yapping, much like this, and I put it out on the internet, and I told myself, if this video even gets like 10-15 views, it will be a miracle, because I just didn't and could not believe that anyone, especially in this day and age, would like sit down to listen to some guy talk online. But lo and behold, that video ended up getting quite a lot of views, like about 7,000 views as of right now, and it blew my mind because I just never expected that many people to care. And also, there were a lot of people in the comments really engaging in conversation and like sort of talking, and discussing amongst themselves and with me about sort of the topic was, my feeling that like video games used to be a lot more simple and in my eyes better and when we were younger, because there was so much less choice, and what does having more choice really do for us, blah 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 blah. And I was just talking, it wasn't like a coherently like well thought out argument or anything like that. But again, my point is that there's something about this kind of, yeah, I guess the word is authenticity, that I think that people crave and people want. And it's not even just, oh, I'm doing it because other people want it, but it's like, I want to put this out there and connect with other people in this way, you know? Some of my videos are very curated. You know, I write a script, I do my voiceover, I edit for days on end. I try to get better at editing with every video I make. I try to get better as a storyteller with every video I make. But at the same time, that sort of part of me and that sort of creative energy feels very different than what I'm doing now, which is a different type of energy and vibe, you know? It's a different feeling. Like, I'm sitting in this room talking to a microphone by myself, and yet this feels right, you know, in this moment, to be able to voice my opinion and thoughts in this way. Something about this to me feels good, and it feels right. And there's this part of me that hopes that maybe somewhere out there, you know, whether it's for just falling asleep to, just to have something to listen to in the background to fall asleep to, which is something that I actually do a lot with random videos on YouTube when I have trouble sleeping, or if it's just something to actually, like, you know, listen to, like some sort of podcast, and sort of, you know, use my experience and story and what I'm talking about to either connect or sort of you know, think about something to just sort of like chew on mentally. Regardless of what the use case is, the fact that somebody out there might actually sort of listen to me talk about these things and sort of have some sort of like a reaction, that is so interesting to me. Like, just something like that just boggles my mind, you know? And I want to definitely, you know, have these moments. I don't want just what I put out there online to be just about like edited gaming videos, which is what I currently do. Who knows, in the future I might you know, divert completely from that sort of general sort of topic or genre. But, you know, recently my channel hit a really cool milestone, which is 1,000 subscribers. I had no clue that I'd be able to hit it this year before the year ended, and I'm really thankful for the people who were interested enough in the things I had to say and things I made to subscribe. And it's just a really cool, humbling experience for sure. You know, it's funny, back before I made anything online, you know, I had edited videos, you know, like for myself or for class projects, and I knew how hard editing video was, but I didn't really understand, you know, what it took to have a YouTube channel and make content on YouTube that, you know, people would actually want to watch. I really genuinely had no clue. And so when I started making stuff, it was just such a cool experience, man, because I've had this a lot where, as a consumer of something, it's such a different experience to then become the creator of that and then experience what it's like to be on that side. One example that I like to give is sort of video games, right? Like, you know, a lot of people love playing video games, and as much as there are awesome games out there, there is also a lot of games that just kind of is like mediocre, isn't that great. And, you know, it's really easy to sit back and just be like, wow, this game is so mediocre, and like, you know, this and that, and maybe the artist or the dialogue's really cheesy, or I don't know, like this game mechanic is just like a copy of that and this. I kid you not, when I tried to make a game, this was in college with several of my friends. We tried to make a video game in about 2 months during our one of our breaks. It was some of the hardest, like one of the most hardest thing I did in my life, because it was just, I was just so blown away at how, you know, difficult some things were to do that I had no clue before. And it really made me sort of think about and give a lot of respect to people who make things in general, but especially in that time, video games. It also made me realize, like, you know, like for the most part, like I'm willing to bet like no one is trying to intentionally make bad experiences. No one's trying to make bad games, you know. It's not an intentional act. It's just that like things happen. Maybe choices that you know, in hindsight weren't good choices, but again, it's really tough, difficult thing to do, you know. Like good games don't just come out of thin air. It's a really hard thing to do. And so going back to the YouTube videos that people actually want to watch and have a lot of views are really difficult things to do. I had no clue how difficult it could be. You know, I'm gonna be honest, like before I started the channel, I used to think like I would look at like the views of some YouTube videos, and to me like 1,000 views was like nothing, you know. Like 1,000 views was just like so low, because I would be watching videos that have 500,000, 800,000, million, 4 million, 12 million. Like those are numbers that to me were like, oh, these are big, popular, successful videos. To see it like, you know, like 1,000 views on a video, I was just, to me it was just like, oh, that's just 1,000 views. And then you go make your own video, right? And then you realize when you get that first 1,000 views on a video, I thought it was one of the coolest experiences of my life, because it was like, to think that, yeah, if you think about it that way, like compared to these big creators, 1,000 views is nothing. But if you then take it a step back and think, you know, like think about a venue with 1,000 people, okay? Like 1,000 people, you know, maybe like, you know, probably most of them didn't watch the whole video, whatever. Like, let's just step back for a second and just, you know, simplify everything. 1,000 people clicked on your video and watched through, you know, some part of it. That is pretty cool, right? And then there's going to be some people who want to leave comments. They care enough to leave comments. Now, you know, obviously not everyone leaves good comments or nice comments. But I think for the most part, people who take time out of their day to write something online, you know, that takes energy, man. Like, you know, I don't know if you guys are like this, but I don't like go out of my way to write comments unless I feel very strongly about something, right? And so that is also really cool. You know what I mean? And yeah, it's just a different perspective. And being both a consumer of videos and creator of videos, it's just such a cool experience, you know, experiencing both aspects of that and what that means. And, you know, sometimes I find myself kind of, it's weird because sometimes, you know, I get into this mode where I'm like, when I'm making a lot of videos, I'm watching everything in a very analytical eye, right? It's like, oh wow, like their intro is really, you know, really short, but it's also really good, and it gets straight to the action. It's like very nice, blah blah blah. You know, I start thinking about all these things, and then, you know, I won't create for stuff for a while, and then I'll just kind of fall back to just the consumer me, and then I won't care about any of that stuff, and I'll just like watch it. And then again, other times when I'm creating, I'll just be really amazed. Like I'll be like, wow, it must have taken a long time and a lot of effort to do this. If you've never created videos, but you thought about creating videos, whether that be for YouTube as a hobby, or maybe you are someone who is like, hey, I would love to be a streamer or a content creator or whatever it is, I challenge you to make a video today, right? And I don't mean like a video that like, you know, it's like that the video you create today is gonna like, you're gonna publish it and you're gonna become the next, you know, greatest YouTuber or whatever. But even if you don't publish it, just for the pure like artistic exercise of making something to completion, I think it's absolutely worth it. I think it's really worth it to try to experience it, because in my experience, not only will you realize like, wow, this stuff is like kind of hard, you know, it's kind of hard to make, but that's not the end of it, because then the other part of it is like, you kind of get to appreciate like what it goes into making something. And then you might also find, hey, this is like pretty fun and I actually kind of like it. And that's the thing, like making stuff, doing something, and then the thought of one day doing something, in your head, like that sounds cool, right? Are very, very different experiences. Maybe in the future, I'll talk more about my experience with that, specifically with 3D digital modeling. But that's maybe a story for another time. But yeah, I just think that making stuff and sharing it with people online is a worthwhile endeavor, even if it doesn't mean making money or, I don't know, having like internet points for it. The pure act in and of itself of creation, that creative process of start to finish, working on something and sort of releasing it to the world, it's a really cool experience. And again, I'm very grateful to have a lot of people who react positively to the stuff I create. And some of my favorite, experiences making stuff is just seeing people comment and tell me, hey, you made something and it made me feel this way. And there is no cooler feeling in the world to me than to know that something that I've released into this world, that I brought into this world, has had an impact on someone else. Especially when they are obviously positive experiences, right? And so I'd love to continue doing this. I really want to make stuff sustainably in the future and release things more frequently. And part of that will be, some of that will be really edited videos. Some of them will be talking about specific games that you might be interested in, you might not be interested in. And then some of the stuff will just be like kind of just weird, quirky, odd things like this, me just sitting here talking for like 30 something minutes nonstop. And I don't know if there's anyone who's actually watching or listening to this by the end of it, but if you are, thank you very much. I'm not going to ask you to like, subscribe, comment, or any of that stuff, because here's a weird thing about me. I've definitely said those in videos in the past. Sometimes, because that's what you're supposed to do, I guess, when you make YouTube videos and you're trying to grow. But my hope is that more so than sort of asking people to support you in various ways, if I can create something that I really care about and mean, and that connects with other people who also care about that, then that in and of itself will be enough to compel someone to do whatever it takes to keep up with what I'm creating and communicate with me, talk with me, whether that be by subscribing or commenting or sharing or liking or whatever. And so this isn't to say like, doing any of that stuff is bad. This isn't to say that I'll never say that in any of my videos or whatever, but what I do believe is making stuff that I care about and that I love is the most important thing that I can do. And that also coincidentally oftentimes I think probably does lead to connecting with a lot of people, and oftentimes that leads to success on the channel and on the platform, right? So to conclude, if you are listening to all the way to the end, congratulations, you are one of the very, very few, and I thank you for the patience and the willingness to listen to what I have to say. And if you have any thoughts about any of the things I said, I would love to hear them. I really do read like every single comment, and I love responding to comments. So if you want to share something with me, please do. And until next time, I will keep working hard on my future videos, and I'll see you next time when I see you.